I was 62 the day I married Isla. She was 29 and so stunning it made people stare in restaurants too long, too curious. I should have paid attention to that. But back then, I was just grateful. After losing Margaret, after 2 decades alone, Isla was like spring in a house long shuttered. She laughed at my jokes, tended to my garden, said I reminded her of real men, the kind they don't make anymore. I didn't see the trap. I married it. If you think this betrayal is cold, wait until you see how he flips it. Subscribe now for more stories where karma doesn't knock, it kicks down the door. We married 6 months after we met. My children weren't at the ceremony. Claire said, "She's a gold digger, Dad." David didn't say anything at all. He just stopped calling. But I couldn't blame them. They saw what I didn't. Or maybe they saw what I refused to admit. I was a lonely man in a house too quiet for his own thoughts. The first year, Isla was radiant. She cooked, hosted friends, sat on my lap like we were still in our 20s. She called me my lion and told strangers how she'd never met anyone so patient, so kind, so accomplished. And I believed every word. The cancer came the week after our 2nd anniversary. Stage 3 colorectal. The doctor delivered it gently, but Isla cried harder than I did. She wrapped her arms around me like she was mourning something still breathing. At the time, I thought it was devotion. I mistook it for fear of loss. But now I know better. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was calculating what I still had left to take. It started with subtle changes. She began handling my medications, took over the bills, changed my passwords for my protection. I trusted her. I'd given her power of attorney during my first surgery, assuming it was temporary. But when I tried to access my bank account, she said I must have forgotten the new code. I didn't. That code had been mine since the Gulf War. She traveled more, citing burnout and grief fatigue. A girl's trip to Palm Springs turned into 5 days in Europe. When I called, she was sleeping. I stopped calling. She stopped offering to cook. The fridge filled with her wines and her diets, none of which I could eat. My house began to feel like a rented suite. I told myself it was the chemo, that I was growing paranoid. My own body was betraying me, why wouldn't my mind? But then I found the second phone. It was tucked inside the linen closet, wedged behind folded bath towels. Sleek. New. Not registered to my plan. The wallpaper was a selfie of her, topless, laughing, in a room I'd never seen before. The messages were clear. He's slipping fast. Few more months and we're free. Make sure the trust lands clean. He won't notice another signature. The last message was from someone saved only as D. I didn't get angry. I got very, very quiet. Because dying teaches you to cherish energy. And I intended to spend every last ounce of mine on making her regret breathing. Pain makes you desperate. Illness makes you humble. But betrayal? That brings clarity no medicine ever could. I stared at Isla's second phone for hours, the screen still lit with her lover's words. There was no apology, no hesitation. She had been planning it for months, waiting for the moment I was too weak to protest. I imagined them laughing about it, calling it early inheritance, like they were doing me a favor. I didn't sleep that night. I just watched her breathe beside me, and I started building my counterattack. I began with the power of attorney. Quietly, I reached out to Claire and David. My children hadn't spoken to me in over a year, but they responded instantly when I said I needed help. Not forgiveness, not even understanding. Just help. I gave them everything. Access to my legal records, account information, and copies of Isla's text messages. David brought a corporate attorney from his firm. Claire brought a digital forensics expert. We met at a hotel, never at the house. We were careful, because now I was being watched. The first thing I did was fake confusion. I let Isla believe the cancer had progressed to my mind. I pretended to forget names. I slurred my speech. I left burner phones lying around with vague notes on them. I made her feel secure. The more she thought I was slipping, the more reckless she became. She started consolidating assets, closed one of my smaller investment accounts, tried to sell my mother's antique collection, told the housekeeper I'd agreed to move into a care facility soon. I smiled and nodded and waited. That's when I discovered what D really stood for. Damon Ridley, my estate attorney. The same man who helped me draft my updated will. The same man I had trusted for over a decade. He had been sleeping with my wife for 5 months. He was going to help her dissolve the marriage quietly, and then, once I was out of the picture, either dead or committed, transfer the estate to a trust in her name. They had already started drafting it. I gathered everything. Emails, text threads, video calls. Claire recorded Isla bragging to a friend over drinks, saying, "He'll sign anything these days." It's like living with a vegetable in a sweater. She didn't know the bartender was wearing a mic. David traced a fake real estate purchase she tried to make using funds from one of my holding companies. Fraudulent enough to trigger a full investigation if filed properly. And we did file it. But we waited. Because this kind of justice? It tastes better when served in front of a room full of people who once believed her lies. The invitations were printed in gold leaf. Thick cardstock with the Delane family crest embossed in the corner. Isla designed them herself. She called it the celebration of life, a grand affair to mark my legacy while I could still enjoy it. Guests were told it would be a hybrid birthday party and renewal of vows. What Isla didn't know was that I'd turned it into something else entirely. She wanted a stage. So I built her one, with spotlights she didn't expect. This is where everything changes. If you've stayed with us this far, subscribe now to see what real revenge looks like when it's legal, precise, and unforgettable. 2 days before the event, I signed a new will. Legally notarized. Witnessed. Ironclad. In it, Isla received nothing. Not a cent. I placed every asset in a trust under Claire and David's control, with strict clauses protecting it from spousal claims and revoking all former power of attorney permissions. Then, I filed a separate complaint with the State Bar Association, anonymously at first, against Damon Ridley for professional misconduct and conflict of interest. Everything was in motion, and Isla still thought she was planning a party. She wore white. Of course she did. The dress shimmered beneath the chandeliers of the estate's ballroom, her hair styled, lips glossed, eyes shining with fake warmth. She greeted the guests like royalty, smiled for the photographers, posed with me like she hadn't tried to forge my signature 3 days prior. When it was time for speeches, she insisted on going first. She praised me, lied through her perfect teeth about devotion, about our love, about what an honor it was to grow old with me. And then she invited me to say something. I stepped up to the mic and cleared my throat. "I'd like to thank my wife for organizing this," I said. "And I'd like to thank everyone who came to witness the truth." The screen behind me flickered to life, then played footage Isla never knew existed. Her on the phone, with Damon, plotting. Her at the bar, laughing. Her texts, displayed line by line, word for word. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. She stood frozen, and I turned back to her. "This is your celebration," I said, voice calm, "of the legacy you tried to steal, and of the one I've reclaimed." The ballroom emptied fast after the footage played. Some guests didn't even look at Isla as they left. Others watched her like she was a creature in a cage, caught, exposed, pitiful. Damon didn't show up. I made sure he was served with a subpoena that morning. Isla called his number 5 times during cleanup. He didn't answer. She didn't cry. Not in front of me. She just stared like she didn't understand how the script flipped without her noticing. Like she couldn't believe I'd outplayed her. She forgot I'd lived through war. She forgot I'd been betrayed before. She forgot I was still breathing. The next morning, I staged a different kind of event. My own death. Not literally, legally. I filed paperwork to transfer my identity into a medical privacy trust, legally shielding my records from her access. For the outside world, I had been admitted to an advanced palliative care facility, sedated, unresponsive. For Isla, I was now unreachable. No visitation, no decisions, no control. She spiraled, fast. She tried contacting my financial advisor, only to find the firm had frozen her out. She called the hospital, demanded proof I was there. She sent flowers, then threats. All unanswered. Claire kept me updated. "She's unraveling," she said. "She's starting to think you really died without giving her anything." That's when I wrote the final letter. Not to Isla, to the media. An op-ed, published anonymously, titled, "What Happens When a Gold Digger Marries a Man Who Outlives Her Plans." The story caught fire. It detailed everything without naming names. The forged power of attorney, the affair with the estate attorney, the recorded conversations, the trust, the final legal blow. Commenters speculated. People connected dots. And Isla? She tried to sue the paper. But to sue, she'd have to prove it wasn't true. And that meant admitting everything. She didn't. She just packed her bags, vanished from our town, and filed for bankruptcy 4 months later. The funeral she planned for me never happened. But her reputation? We buried that instead. She came back one last time. 6 months after her public unraveling, Isla showed up at the estate gate wearing black, as if mourning the life she meant to steal. She buzzed the intercom and said, "I just want closure." Her voice shook, not from grief, but from panic disguised as civility. I watched from the upstairs window. My daughter stood beside me, hands folded. "Should we call security?" She asked. "No," I said. "Let her stand there. Let her feel the cold." And we did. For 15 long minutes. I never spoke to her. Not a word. I didn't need to. Because she was already buried under the weight of what she did and what she lost. The annulment papers were served the next day. She contested them, briefly, but Damon Ridley's disbarment took the wind out of her. My team had made sure every signature she touched, every fraudulent document, every account she accessed, was cataloged, notarized, and submitted under legal shield. She walked away with nothing. No name, no access, no power. Just the echo of a last name she no longer had a right to wear. I've lived quietly since. The cancer hasn't left, but it's slowed down, as if vengeance itself had given me more time. The doctors don't understand it, but I do. Peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the absence of the people who cause it. She took vows. I took her down. If this story of deception, downfall, and justice made your pulse spike, subscribe now. Because here, we don't just survive betrayal. We bury it.